how to experience a kingdom lifestyle that is both focused and balanced. Welcome to Live Exceptionally. In a world where we are constantly bombarded with demands on our time and attention, it can be difficult to find the space to truly live our best lives. But what if we could find a way to live exceptionally with a sense of purpose, freedom, and rest? Whether you're a busy professional, a stay-at-home parent, or anyone who wants to live a more focused and balanced life, this show is for you. Join us as we discover how to live exceptionally, finding freedom and rest along the way. Now, let's get into this week's episode of Live Exceptionally with Dr. Evonne Thompson.
Welcome back to Live Exceptionally, where we equip people with keys and tools to experience a kingdom lifestyle that is purposeful, focused, and balanced. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with others on YouTube or your preferred podcast platform. And stay connected with us at elisi.org to know about events, inspirational media, and more. Well, this month we continue our focus on an overall theme of kingdom-minded entrepreneurs in the marketplace. We're hearing from women who founded, own, and work in their own businesses. We're hearing their stories related to challenges and successes and how they maintain whole wellness as they oversee their business. And this week, we're speaking to Tammy Chapek, who is CEO and founder of We Inspire We. And she is an executive leader and coach as well. Hi, Tammy.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
It's good for you to be here. Thank you so much for joining. So before we get started in today's topic, how about you go ahead and briefly share about yourself and background?
Yeah, so my name is Tammy Chapek. I'm an executive leadership coach, and I started my business a little over 6 years ago under the premise of giving everybody the opportunity to figure out how to be the best leader that they can be. We all have great gifts and talents within us, and we don't often get to tap into those or realize the true beauty and I say greatness that we have. And so my whole focus, my whole mission in life is to help people discover that, to lean into that, and to step into bigger, more bolder positions to be both successful, but also more satisfied in their lives, and also to carry forward a more positive impact in the world around us. I've been doing this. I feel like I've been doing this my whole life, but started the business, like I said, a little over 6 years ago. And I'm so pleased that it's been able to keep growing. I now have 8 coaches that work with me on the team, including I call her my career storyteller, who helps people with their resumes and LinkedIn profiles when they're looking to change careers too.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about the We Inspire We purpose, mission, and focus? Even your company name, We Inspire Me. I know that has a We Inspire We background on that company name.
Yeah, it's funny, my life prior to starting this business was in marketing and advertising, and I know the power of branding. And so one thing that was really important to me as I thought about this is really, it's about community, and it's about individuals coming together to support each other, to lift each other up, to help each other. I have a big heart for women and supporting underrepresented groups and getting ahead. And I really believe in, women helping women and helping to advance each other. So I designed the company and branded the company We Inspire We, so that it's a group of people coming together to inspire and uplift each other. Our tagline is inspiring leaders, amplifying impact, because I truly believe that one person can make a significant difference, and there's a ripple effect in everything that we do, both positively and negatively. So our mission is really around helping each individual, right, learn their impact, their power, their truth, how to lean into that, how to make that positive impact, difference, and change in the world, and how to recognize the ripple effect to optimize it as best as can be, ultimately to help more level out the playing field and help individuals, to live in a more peaceful, equitable world.
I love when you talk about that a part of your mission is amplifying impact, and that we all, regardless of what circle we're in, job, family, we're making some type of impact, whether it's our next door neighbor, whether it's our family. So when you talk about amplifying impact, would you like to just talk a little bit more about how you go about doing that? I think that is so key.
Yeah, right. And it's a couple things that, I came to realize very the power of a little thing, we call them, like small acts of kindness or a smile. This goes way back to my early college days. I went to a school and everybody said hi to each other on the sidewalk. And just like you did, Yvonne, like you smile or you have a reaction to it. So these tiny little things that we do can make an impact to somebody's life. And so what I believe is that, by allowing each of us to understand the authentic versions of ourselves, our values, our gifts, the things that we have inherent to us and leaning into those versus changing who we are into somebody that we're not, um, life becomes so much easier. We are so much happier. Then that happiness can cascade on to the next person and the next and the next, right? So imagine just a little bubble, right? So maybe you have 4 people that report to you in an office setting. So as a leader, every day you impact those 4 people in a significant way. So if you're in a good mood, if you're a great leader, if you're empowering them, they're going to be happy, they're going to smile, and they're going to carry that impact forth too. And then each of them has, let's say, 4 people around them that they come into contact with on a daily basis. So right there, you've gone from you being one person to impacting 16 people and so forth, right? So it goes really, really fast, becomes a significant amplification of the power and what you can do, and having the intention and mindset and focus on really being the best version of yourself, helping other people be the best versions of themselves is only going to create positive and significant impact.
That's really good. And even just from a coach perspective and from a leadership perspective, encouraging people to know that they're in everything that they're doing, there's some element of impact. Sometimes
Everything.
right. Sometimes I think there's a lot of focus on like big type of contributions that we make, but even in just being nice to someone
Yeah.
can change someone's life. I remember a story I read about a person that was working in the drive-through, and not to be morbid, but this particular person was having a really bad day and was thinking about suicide. And he felt like what he did wasn't really important and that no one really paid attention to him. And one lady, he had said if no one spoke to him, that he was just going to go through it. And then one lady happened to just stop and say hello and thank you, was very kind to him. And it changed his perspective just in that instant. So her being nice and her just smiling and taking the time to speak to
Mhm.
him it may have seemed like a small thing, but it had a huge impact in life decision change that he made.
It's such a great story and a great example because really it's those little things that matter so much more than the big things and the everyday things, right? So, the smile, even just the attitude that you carry around, the energy that you're carrying around with you. I think sometimes we think we're better actors than we are. We're upset, having a bad day, whatever's going on. We think we're masking it, but we carry it with us. Other people can feel it. They are impacted by it. So, having that mindfulness, that self-awareness and understanding of what's going on for us and choosing, do I want this to be the face that I'm bringing forth? Or is there something else that I'd like to be known for, that I'd like to carry forth to impact those around me?
Right. One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about today was about burnout. How do we effectively manage burnout as leaders? And I know you interact with a lot of professionals and women business leaders. I mean, we serve on a board together. And one of the things that I consistently hear is around people struggling to balance their life with family, job, volunteer positions, ministry type engagements, and all these types of things. And tending to feel burnout or overwhelmed by all the things that they have to juggle. What do you think are some of the key contributing factors around burnout? What are you seeing with the people that you coach?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in our society, especially kind of coming out of COVID with massive hiring and massive layoffs, we're all being tasked to do more with less, less resources, less support, less people around us, positively or negatively. So it's just more and more and more. And I find that leaders seem to be, the attitude is if I take on more, then I'm going to get promoted faster or I'll be more successful. So the more I do, the better it is. When in fact, that's kind of the opposite. There's a really powerful stat I heard that once you get past the average person, once you work past 40 hours a week, you lose productivity by 50%, like 50. So you think about that, right? So if you're packing in your days and you're just adding more, you're not going to be moving as efficient. You're not going to be as productive. You're going to be running on fumes, right?
Right.
You're sacrificing self-care. You're sacrificing things that are going to fill you up, right? With the job, with the, the things that you feel are obligations or requirements, or I like to call them the shoulds. Like we always feel like we should be doing these things, right? And I think a lot of burnout is also just, we tend to carry a lot of emotions around the things, right? That we should, the to-do list. We tend to feel guilty if we say no, or if we try to prioritize a personal need over somebody else's need. I think women in particular really suffer from that. And there's a lot of, some of it's societal, some of it's the nurturing qualities, but I think there's a lot that people carry with them where there's, you feel guilty, you feel shame if you're prioritizing yourself over somebody else. But, go back to that productivity stat, right? Like if you're on fumes or like, you hear people say that the airport analogy, right? If you're on a plane and it starts to go down and your mask come out, you put it on yourself first because you can't help anybody else if you can't breathe, right? So the same thing holds true. And I think, we're just in a world where we need to learn how to have better boundaries. We need to have the ability to better maintain what we need to stay as full as possible, to be as productive, innovative, creative as possible, and to allow, the rest of that goodness to keep flowing. I think a huge part of it, self-awareness too, and really taking the time to be reflective and to pay attention to, all aspects of your body, all aspects of wellness, mind, body, soul, spirit, right? Like you need to know what's feeling right and what isn't at any given time, and how to take care of that.
Yeah, in my book, I actually talk about that whole diminishing return on productivity, that a lot of times, even for myself, I would think about times where I would stay up trying to get more work done, but then because I couldn't concentrate, I was so tired or even sleepy, it was taking me longer to complete the task that I was so focused on. Whereas if I would have just, shut down and then start fresh the next day, I would have more energy, I would be more alert and be able to approach that task in a frame of mind to actually work a bit quicker because I had refreshed myself. So I think that's
so true. Yeah, but we tend to just power through. And I heard this. I teach a boundaries class, and I learned something from somebody else that I borrowed to pull into the class. But it's so powerful, and if it's okay, I'll share it here. But it's really, we tend to think of things being so gray, right? I'll just keep powering through. I'll get it done. It'll be fine. But it's a direct yes and no. It's a direct correlation, right? So when I say yes to working late, I'm saying no to sleep. Or when I say yes to taking on that extra project, I'm saying no to dinner out with friends or time with my children or whatever those things are. It is a one for one. And we like to pretend that it's not. It's okay. There's always more time, but there isn't. Time is the only non-renewable resource. We cannot get more of it. So every time we add more, we keep rushing through those things or keep working harder, longer, whatever. Or even on fumes, to your point, I worked so late, and if I would have just taken a break, it would have been so much better. But we said yes to that, and we said no to taking care of ourselves.
right. And not even with that is the fact that when it takes longer, but also when you start making mistakes and having to redo or revisit, the things that you had been working on because of not being alert or being too tired or sleepy.
Right. But you think you can do it.
Exactly. So what do you think are some of the key stigmas? Like when you look at some of the people that you're working with, are there any key stigmas that come to mind as you're working with them that people have that prevent them from really managing themselves, or that self-awareness that you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about stigmas necessarily, but I think it's about, we move fast in our society, in our world. We're expected to move fast professionally, right? We don't take the time. We don't pause. We don't take time to reflect. We don't take time to self-assess, do body scans. We just don't take the time, typically. And we don't tend to prioritize again ourselves over other things. There's a lot of things that come back, when you do take the time. For example, I know a lot of women suffer from, I've got to go pick up my kid. Well, you're not going to be able to attend this meeting then, or you're not going to be able to complete this project then. And there's a lot of judgment around that.
Right.
About a lot of judgment around, like, are you committed to the job or not? Of course. I think there's a lot that's associated with being able to do everything. And a lot of people suffer from feeling like they're a failure because they can't do everything perfectly.
Right.
And good is the enemy of great, or great is the enemy of good. Right? Like we want to be excellent and excel at everything, and then we put our expectations super duper high and can't meet them. Then the motivation goes away, our ability to keep shining goes away. So there's a lot of things I think that play into it, and a lot of judgment we put on ourselves more than anybody else does. And it's interesting because, we tend to think everyone's looking at us and judging us and thinking about, or, looking at us through the same hard lens that we're looking at ourselves through. But, everyone else is looking at themselves that same way. They're not paying as much attention to you as you think that they are. So I think we could just kind of reframe our minds a little bit to understand everybody's got a battle to fight. Everybody's got priorities and things to manage. And if we all gave each other a little bit more grace, it'd be so much easier to navigate.
Yeah, I think that is so good. And when you talk about the grace, giving ourselves grace, because with your being an entrepreneur, and a lot of times your deadlines that you set are, I'm sure, your own deadlines. There might be client deadlines that take place, but for people who work in marketplace or corporate environments where a lot of the deadlines or the pressure are outside of their control, just what's your thoughts on how to manage the external factors that we actually can't control?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think tendency is, well, I have this deadline, I have to do it. There's you're coming from a place of fear or, again, that obligation. But I don't think people communicate well enough. I don't think people manage expectations for self or others, or communicate what's all on their plate. So I'm a huge advocate of managing up in those kinds of situations, right? Hey, boss, I have these 5 projects that you've assigned to me, and I'm thrilled to work on all of them, but they're all kind of due at the same time, and it seems, quite impossible to do a good job on all of them at the same time. So is there something that you'd recommend I focus on over another? Is there a deadline that could be shift? Almost putting it back on your boss or someone else to help you make those decisions, so it doesn't come back as that you dropped the ball or didn't do it. It is a little bit of vulnerability, but it's also making sure people really understand what all is on your plate. I don't think oftentimes even direct bosses understand everything that's on our plates. And sometimes we take it on ourselves. It's that we do a little martyr syndrome, right? We take on more than we necessarily have to. And so some of it is an evaluation. Is this mission critical? Does this have to happen? Do I have to do it? Is there someone else who can do it? Those kinds of questions are great to ask, but I'm a huge advocate for communication. What else all going on? Let's lay it out on the table and let's work through the best path and how to solve for it.
You've shared some great techniques and also things that we can use to combat that. It's like being proactive, how to head off being overwhelmed. And we might even experience being slightly overwhelmed, but avoiding where we're going over the cliff of being burned out. And you've talked about boundaries, you've talked about grace, and you've talked about communication. And communication is actually a new one that I've heard that you've shared that I haven't heard anyone else share, because at the end of the day, when we communicate, that's actually setting up a boundary, to say, this is what I have on my plate. This is what I'm working on. I have this much capacity. And sometimes we could actually be setting our own selves up because we're not communicating and letting people know what we have going on.
Yeah. I wrote an article that is one of my favorites that I've written, and it was inspired by Brene Brown. She talks about expectations in her book, Atlas from the Heart. And, it just really resonated with me because we tend to think everybody else knows. Again, we think everyone's watching us and knows exactly what's going on in our worlds. And so there's a lot of assumption that comes out without communication. And so she calls them stealthy expectations. And her example is, my stealthy expectation is my husband takes the trash out and I'm mad at him when he doesn't take the trash out. Well, she never asked him to take the trash out. There was no agreement that he always takes the trash out, right? So it's an expectation that she had in her mind that he didn't understand and never got. So I wrote an article about that, basically thinking about expectations, but breaking it into a quadrant. Because life is all expectations. Everything that we do is about managing expectations of others, of ourselves, whatever we're putting out. We have expectations for people are going to get back to us. It's everything. And that certainly ties with communication. And so really it's, have your expectations been communicated? Yes or no? And have they been heard / understood? Yes or no, right? You might say it once and you might get a blind head nod, right? But if it hasn't really sunk in, it doesn't mean anything. And I think if we can really focus on communicating our expectations or needs and making sure people hear us, things would be so much more smooth. And it goes back to workload, right? My expectation is I work a 40, maybe 50-hour work week, whereas I'm feeling like you want me to work 80, right? Like let's level set this expectation. But if we don't communicate and we don't talk about it and we don't get it out there, there's never going to be a resolution. There's going to be a mismatch in expectations or where people are looking.
I think that is such a powerful statement because a lot of times the emotional angst that I think all of us experience tie back to we have an expectation of something or someone and it did not measure up to what we expected. So we were disappointed, which then causes us to be frustrated or upset or, whatever the emotional response is. But if we can sharpen our skills as it relates to communicating, and it's funny because I'm a advocate for being a communicator and a strong communicator, but then sometimes it doesn't always carry through. I think for all of us, people who say that they're good communicators in some of these other areas, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, maybe because it's someone we report to, or maybe if we're an entrepreneur, we have our own business because of the client expectations, the burden we put on ourselves that our clients expect this from us, our customers expect this from us, so I have to do this. Where sometimes maybe if we just communicated that, there's a delay or what are the other area or restriction that has taken place, that most often people would be obliged to understand or to give us grace.
Absolutely. And it gets back to them not knowing what else is on your plate or what else is going on or why there's an issue that you might need a time extension for, right? If they don't know it, they're never going to offer you, an extra 2 weeks to get the thing done, right? But if they know something's wrong, that grace, that humanity can really come into play. And it's a great relationship builder, right? It's going to connect you in a deeper way.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the number one reasons or in the top reasons for relationship failure is it could be money, but most often is based on communication, unvoiced expectations or concerns that are never talked through or discussed. So what you've been sharing is, I think, really helpful, not just for women in general, but just people in general. How do we set guardrails around that cliff of being burnt out? How do we avoid burnout and setting boundaries, being self-aware, giving ourselves grace? And I really, really like that technique when you talk about just being a great communicator and not just communicating, in general, but taking a step forward to be vulnerable and sharing our capacity, what we have on our plate, and limitations around what we can actually take on, or even in terms of meeting various deadlines. For We Inspire We, and you're being an executive coach, can you want to just share a little bit more before we close, what your closing thoughts are, what you actually do if someone wants to reach out to work with you, work with your firm?
Yeah, thank you. My website, I think you've had on here, WeInspireWe.com. On there, we have tons of information about the services that we offer, as well as links to for a free consultation. But ultimately, we work with individuals who are looking to elevate themselves professionally or personally. They go hand in hand. There's no separation in my mind. But really, you want something more. You have the ability to give and serve, right? There's something bigger for you. You want to be the best leader possible, the best version of yourself possible. So with coaching, we work to help you identify those things. I always say it's two simple questions. Who are you and what do you really want? Simple, but maybe hard questions to answer. And so coaching will take you through that process of answering those, putting goals together, action plans together, and getting you there. So I have a team of coaches who helps people. We help people do that every day. We also do leadership and career training programs. So we'll go into companies or into nonprofit groups, such as the United Way, or other groups that I've done volunteer work with. We'll go in and help facilitate different conversations or help run different types of development programs. And then I also personally offer keynote speaking engagements, and then a book soon to be published. So watch for that to come too.
Yes, I'm excited about your book. That's how we first talked about your being on the podcast. I wanted to go ahead and move forward with you having you on the show. And once your book is published, we can have you back to talk about some of those
fantastic
tools that you have planned for that. Well, thank you so much, Tammy, for being here. It's been an enlightening discussion. I think the service that you offer as a coach is very well needed. A lot of times when we navigate changing careers or changing companies or even just moving up in a company, it helps to have someone who is like objective versus someone that's in the company we work for, someone outside of our sphere giving us tips and coaching to help navigate that upward process.
I totally agree. And it's best intentions, people around us, or our friends, family, our people we work with, best intentions, but they're looking at it through their own lens, and there's some bias in there. So you want to have someone who can be your cheerleader and advocate for you and help set you up for success.
Definitely. Thanks again. Well, that's all the time that we have for this week's episode. Tune in next week for another episode of Live Exceptionally. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with others on YouTube or your preferred podcast platform. And stay connected with us at elisi.org. Have an exceptional week. God bless.
Thanks for joining us for Live Exceptionally with Dr. Evonne Thompson. Each week we'll explore the secrets to living a life that is both intentional and fulfilling. We'll talk to folks that will share about productivity, mindfulness, and self-care to learn practical tips and strategies for staying focused, managing our time, and finding balance within a kingdom mindset. We'll also hear from people who have made the choice to live exceptionally and learn from their experiences and insights. Connect with Dr. Evonne by signing up at elisi.org. That's ELICI.org. Until next time, we're praying that you find balance and rest so you can live exceptionally.